What's up, board geniuses? Welcome back to another round of Accurate Chess. Today on the operating table, we've got Hans Niemann, who apparently thought it was a good idea to stick his head straight into the lion's jaws. And not just any lion, but Magnus Carlsen. Here's a quick preview. Giving Magnus even the tiniest advantage is like handing a box of matches to a pyromaniac inside a fireworks factory. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the demolition. We're in round 7 of Chess.com's titled Tuesday, August 19th, 2025, in the late session. And as I told you, it's Hans Niemann with the white pieces facing off against Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces. Niemann opens with pawn to e4. A classic. Carlsen, who sees the board in 4D, replies with the sneaky pawn to g6. Niemann plants his flag with pawn to d4, and Magnus fianchettos his bishop to g7, from where it has better views than a Manhattan penthouse. And here comes the first twist. Niemann plays pawn to c3. This isn't a wall. It's more like a garden fence. It's a solid move, yes, but against Magnus, playing solid is like trying to stop a tank with a pillow. Carlsen responds with a simple pawn to d6, getting ready for action. The game continues with textbook moves: knight to f3, knight to c6, pawn to h3, knight to f6. Niemann gives his king a breather with h3, a move that says, please, no monsters under the bed. Then he develops his bishop with bishop to d3, and Carlsen, BM, strikes the center with pawn to e5. Both players castle, kingside castle, and kingside castle, and the rooks wave to each other across the board with rook to e1 and rook to e8. The position looks calm, balanced. It's a trap. Feeling the need to do something, Niemann pushes with pawn to d5, kicking the black knight out. Sorry, buddy, this party is private. Please leave. Instead of getting mad, Carlsen, with the laziness of a sloth, retreats his knight home with knight back to b8. He's not backtracking, he's gearing up from the back of the hall. Hans expands on the queen side with pawn to c4 and knight to c3, while Carlsen puts the brakes on with pawn to a5 and brings his other knight to the party with knight to a6. The preparations continue: pawn to a3, bishop to d7. Niemann hides his bishop on bishop to c2, a prophylactic move to avoid trouble. Carlsen copies the move with pawn to h6. Your jumping knights aren't welcome here. The white rook goes on a little trip with rook to b1, and Magnus executes the key move of his plan, knight to h7. This knight isn't resting on the sidelines. It's putting on sneakers to start a stampede with. Pawn to f5. Hans presses with pawn to b4, but it's already too late. Carlsen unleashes the Kraken with pawn to f5. Now things really heat up. Niemann tries one last push with pawn to c5, and Magnus, with the precision of a surgeon, cuts the tension with pawn takes b4. What follows is a slaughter. Pawn takes b4, pawn takes c5, pawn takes c5, knight takes c5. Niemann plays bishop to d3, repeating to himself, I have compensation, I have compensation. Know what compensation means here? It's like falling from the 10th floor and thinking at the 5th floor. Well, so far so good. A free tip, Hans, if after 18 moves Magnus Carlsen has an extra pawn and an active position, you don't have compensation. You have a very, very big problem. After bishop to e3, pawn to b6, and knight to d2, knight to b7, Carlsen shows he's in no rush. Then comes the climax. After knight to c4, pawn to f4, Niemann, in a fit of genius or panic, plays bishop takes b6. Sacrificing the bishop for 2 pawns. What a hero. The crowd was shouting. In his head, the Rocky theme was playing. In Magnus' head, probably the sound of a cash register. Carlsen recaptures with pawn takes b6. Niemann follows up with knight takes b6. And here, friends, the story takes a 180-degree turn. The fake script said the king steps aside. Reality is much harsher. Magnus plays knight to d6, a move asking the white knight, what now, smarty? Niemann, neck deep in mud, has no choice but to play knight takes a8, winning the rook. In exchange, Carlsen captures with queen takes a8. And here's the key. Niemann gained material of a rook for a knight, but handed the keys to Carlsen's queen. That queen is now a monster, a T-Rex loose in a playground. What follows is a lesson on how a single piece can cause total panic. After bishop to a4, bishop takes a4, knight takes a4, bishop to f8, knight to c5. Niemann tries to create something, but the queen on queen to a7 is already a nightmare. Niemann's knight jumps to knight to e6. What a knight. What a stance. It's not a chess piece, it's an influencer posing for Instagram on the best square of the board. An aesthetically perfect knight, but tactically about to get an unfollow. And the unfollow comes with knight to g5. Magnus, with a single move, says, "Nice pick, but time to get real." Niemann has no choice but to trade. Knight takes g5, pawn takes g5. The influencer knight is gone, along with white's last hopes. The white position collapses. Niemann tries to hold on, rook to c1, king to g7, rook to c6, queen to d4, queen to c2, rook to b8, but the pressure is unbearable. Then comes the check that signals the apocalypse. Rook to e2, queen to a1, check. The white king hides on king to h2. And now, the pure evil move, the lights out, curtain close, rook to b1. This move is like a delayed checkmate. It threatens mate on g1 with the queen, and there's no human way to stop it. Niemann, seeing the mate ghost in every corner of the board, plays pawn to g4, a last gasp to breathe for his king. But it's useless. Carlsen finishes with rook to h1, check, and this is where Niemann's soul left his body. Tip of the day, sometimes your opponent's most brilliant move isn't a direct checkmate, but that silent move that forces you to look at the board and realize you are completely, absolutely, and hopelessly lost. Winning material against Magnus is often the first step to your own execution. Was it Niemann's tactical suicide or Carlsen's masterclass? I want to see the comments burn. But either way, we can all agree it was painful. Okay, you thought the game had given its all, right? Buckle up, because we're going to jump into two alternative realities that were left on the cutting room floor. Two roads not taken on move 23, right after Niemann sacrificed his bishop and recaptured on b6. The first variant is titled, "When Niemann Touched the Crown." Imagine, just for a second, that Magnus Carlsen is a mere mortal. Niemann just played knight takes b6. His knight is breathing down his opponent's neck, and everything hangs by a thread. In our reality, Magnus dropped the genius knight to d6. But what if he had an off day? What if he played the logical move? Here Carlsen plays rook to b8. A human move. Sensible, solid, boring. It's like going to a rap battle and reciting your grocery list. It defends the rook, prepares the defense. Very proper. Niemann, seeing this, can't believe it. The predator showed his neck. He proceeds with the coldness of a surgeon. Knight takes d7, queen takes d7. Clean and simple. The troublesome knight on d7 disappears. Now, the coup de grace, the move that closes the shop, bishop to a4. This move is a masterpiece. It traps the black queen, who in the real game was the queen of the board. Here, with bishop to a4, the queen either trades or sits punished like a kid in timeout. All of Carlsen's counterplay evaporates. Poof. Gone. In this universe, Niemann's compensation stops being a joke and turns into a crushing advantage. His structure is better, his piece is active, and Magnus T-Rex has been reduced to a harmless lizard. Niemann probably would have won the game, and we'd be talking about his masterpiece right now. Moral: sometimes, to make your plan work, you only need the best player in the world to forget, just for a second, that he's the best player in the world. It didn't happen, but dreaming is free. The second variant is titled, "The Universe of Unnecessary Brutality, Warning. This is the uncensored version." Back to the same moment. Knight takes b6 on the board. We saw the genius knight to d6. But what if Magnus decided subtlety was overrated? What if, instead of a scalpel, he went for a chainsaw? Here Carlsen unleashes hell with bishop takes h3. Boom. This isn't chess. It's demolition with a license. The bishop sacrifices itself in the face of the white king, completely wrecking his shelter. He's not looking for advantage, he's looking for blood. Niemann has no choice but to pick up the pieces. Pawn takes h3. His castling right is now like a block of Swiss cheese, full of holes letting and deadly cold. And Magnus doesn't give him a break. Immediately, the rook joins the party with rook to a3. This rook isn't just moving, it glides like a ghost through the king's flank ruins. From here on out, it's a total nightmare. If Niemann tries a patch-up with knight from b to a4, Magnus adds more fuel with knight to g5. Suddenly, the white king has more unwanted company than a celebrity in a shopping mall. Checkmate threats reign everywhere. Total meltdown. And if Niemann tries a desperate counterattack with rook takes b7, Carlsen answers with an octopus-like tactical move, queen to c8. This move is a marvel. It attacks the rook on b7, defends the pawn on b6, and prepares the queen to deliver the finishing blow. Defend, attack, and threaten, all in one. In this reality, Carlsen not only wins, but does so wildly the game would be rated R. The black advantage isn't clear, it's an abyss. The white position is rubble after a bombardment. But Carlsen didn't do that. In the end, he's going to convince us he has a heart. Moral: when you play Magnus and he offers a sacrifice, be careful. Because if you say no, he'll probably beat you. And if you say yes, he'll humiliate you in a way your grandkids will talk about at family dinners. Now we're really done. If you liked this autopsy, which, let's be honest, was really good, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next massacre. See you on the board. Until next time.